Lena let out an exaggerated sigh as she zipped up her suitcase, the sharp sound cutting through the thick silence of the apartment. She wasn't in a hurry. No, she was savoring the moment. "I've found someone better," she announced, a smug smile tugging at her lips. Ryan Carter stood across the room, leaning against the doorframe with an unreadable expression. He didn't argue, didn't plead, didn't even ask who. He just nodded, his calm demeanor throwing her off balance. For a split second, uncertainty flickered in her eyes, but she quickly masked it with a haughty tilt of her chin. "I mean, it's not like I didn't appreciate what we had," Lena continued, her voice dripping with artificial sweetness, rehearsed and insincere. "But let's be honest, Ryan, you're not exactly ambitious." She ran a hand through her hair, admiring her reflection in the mirror. "David knows what he wants. He's driven. He makes things happen." Ryan's lips curled slightly at the irony. "Oh, David made things happen. All right. I see," he said simply. Lena sighed again, as if she were the one making the sacrifice. "Look, I don't want to hurt you. I deserve more." He gave a single nod. "Of course." And that was it. No grand speech, no argument, no desperate attempt to change her mind. Just quiet acceptance. Lena narrowed her eyes, clearly unsettled. "I thought you'd be angrier." Ryan shrugged. "What's the point?" Her fingers tightened around the suitcase handle, her brows furrowing. She had expected something more, a confrontation, an outburst, maybe even a last-ditch effort to win her back. But Ryan never played into expectations. With a flick of her hair, she turned on her heel and strode toward the door. At the threshold, she hesitated just long enough to glance over her shoulder. "Goodbye, Ryan." He met her gaze with that same unreadable expression. "Goodbye, Lena." And just like that, she was gone. Ryan stood in the quiet apartment, listening to the distant hum of the elevator as it carried her away. He exhaled slowly, running a hand through his dark hair. His pulse remained steady, his mind clear. This wasn't a loss. It was an opportunity. Lena thought she had won, walking away with her so-called upgrade. But what she didn't realize was that the pedestal she had just stepped onto was already crumbling beneath her feet. Ryan pulled his phone from his pocket and scrolled through his messages. It had taken him less than an hour to confirm what he had suspected. David Holloway had secrets. And worse than that, he was the kind of man who believed himself untouchable. Ryan tapped on Michelle Holloway's social media profile, studying the woman who unknowingly held the power to bring everything crashing down. Elegant, poised, the type who never saw it coming, until it was too late. A slow smile spread across his face as he began typing. Anonymous message. "I thought you should know how your husband spends his weekends. Here's some proof." He attached the screenshots, the hotel bookings, the receipts. Then, with the press of a button, he sent it. Leaning back against the couch, Ryan waited. He had never believed in revenge driven by blind rage. That was reckless, messy. He preferred precision. The kind of retaliation that didn't just hurt. It taught a lesson. Lena thought she had traded up, found a man with wealth, influence, and sophistication. But David Holloway had sold her a fantasy, and she had eagerly bought into it. What she failed to grasp was that illusions built on deception had a way of turning into nightmares. As Ryan sat in the dimly lit apartment, his phone resting in his hand, he imagined the sequence of events unfolding. Michelle Holloway would check her notifications soon enough. She would hesitate before opening an anonymous message. Then, as her eyes landed on the damning evidence, the carefully constructed illusion of her perfect life would begin to crack. But Ryan wasn't done yet. Sending a few messages would have been too easy. He had done his research. He had mapped out David's movements, documented his indiscretions, and pieced together the puzzle that Lena had been too blind to see. There were receipts from luxury hotels, late-night rendezvous, and flirtatious text exchanges that left no room for doubt. David, for all his supposed intelligence, had made a fatal mistake. He underestimated the power of the quiet observer. Lena had no clue what was coming. She was too busy celebrating her so-called victory. And that was exactly what made her downfall inevitable. Lena was likely basking in the excitement of her new relationship, probably texting David at that very moment, making plans, blissfully unaware that those plans were about to crumble beneath her. Ryan glanced at the clock. If Michelle Holloway was anything like he suspected, a woman of grace, intelligence, and unwavering self-respect, she wouldn't react impulsively. No, she would take her time. She would verify, gather proof, and when she finally made her move, it would be with absolute certainty. Pouring himself a drink, Ryan let the burn of whiskey settle in his throat. His mind drifted back to the moment Lena had walked out, her voice laced with arrogance, her barely concealed delight at what she believed was a triumphant departure. He almost pitied her. Almost. His phone vibrated. A message, but not from Michelle. Lena, I hope we can still be friends. I don't want things to be awkward between us. Ryan let out a quiet chuckle. Friends? Did she really think he'd spend his time pining over her, wallowing in heartbreak while she moved forward unscathed? He typed a brief response. Ryan, of course. Then he set his phone down, letting her believe it. Let her think she had left behind a man who was gracious, mature, and understanding. Meanwhile, the reality she was stepping into had already been set to implode. Hours passed. Then another message arrived. This time, from an unknown number. Michelle Holloway, who are you? Ryan smirked. It had begun. His reply was simple. Ryan, just someone who thought you deserved to know the truth. A moment later, the typing bubble appeared. Michelle was reading, processing, and soon she would act. David Holloway, a man who had juggled deception with the confidence of someone who had never faced real consequences, was about to come crashing down. And Lena, the woman who believed she had traded up, who thought she had secured something greater, was about to realize she had been nothing more than a pawn in a game she didn't even know she was playing. Ryan didn't need to check his phone to know what would come next. Michelle would confront David. There would be accusations, chaos, a fallout so swift Lena wouldn't even have time to process it. And when she finally pieced everything together, she'd realize the common thread in her downfall. Ryan. But by then it would be far too late. Finishing his drink, he leaned back, already anticipating the storm that was about to unfold. Michelle Holloway was not the type of woman who tolerated betrayal. That much became clear when her next message came through. Michelle, I need to meet you. Now, Ryan's smirk deepened. He had expected anger, maybe even disbelief. But Michelle wasn't wasting time with pointless questions. She was a woman who dealt in facts, and the evidence he provided left no room for doubt. He sent her a location, a quiet cafe in the city, far from the polished world she was used to, a place where she could steady herself before taking the next step. By the time he arrived, Michelle was already there, seated in a corner booth, hands wrapped around a coffee cup she had no intention of drinking. Her posture was composed, but the tension in her jaw said everything Ryan needed to know. She didn't acknowledge him as he slid into the seat across from her. She was scrolling through the screenshots he had sent, absorbing the betrayal in real time. When she finally spoke, her voice was even, but cold as steel. How long? Ryan folded his hands on the table, meeting her gaze. At least 6 months, that I can confirm. But knowing men like David, probably longer. Michelle exhaled sharply, pressing her fingertips against her temple. And the woman? He could tell she was hoping for some reassurance, some small mercy that would make this easier to accept. Maybe that Lena was just a stranger, someone unimportant. But Ryan didn't believe in false comfort. Her name is Lena Hayes. She was my girlfriend. She left me for him. Michelle let out a short, humorless laugh. So, he's not just a liar, he's predictable. She shook her head, disgusted, trading in one woman for another like a leased car. Ryan said nothing. He didn't have to. The wheels in Michelle's mind were already turning. I assume you didn't tell me this out of the kindness of your heart, she said, her gaze sharp. You had something to gain from this. Ryan gave a faint smile. Let's just say I believe in justice. Michelle studied him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. So do I? She took one last look at her phone before flipping it face down on the table. When she met his eyes again, her expression was calm, composed, but Ryan could see it, the storm brewing beneath the surface. I'll handle David, she said. You don't need to do anything else. Ryan leaned back, satisfied. He had no doubt she meant it. Michelle Holloway wasn't the type to explode in blind rage. No, she dismantled, methodically, piece by piece. And David? He had no idea what was coming for him. As Ryan stood to leave, Michelle spoke once more. "When this is over," she said, her voice measured, "I want you to know you did me a favor." Ryan gave a small nod. "Likewise." And with that, he walked away, leaving Michelle Holloway to finish what had started. David Holloway had no idea his world was already caving in. A man who had built his life on deception, weaving lies as effortlessly as breathing, always certain he would never be caught. This time he would be. Michelle was waiting for him when he walked through the door that evening. And Ryan? He had no reason to stay and watch the downfall, because he already knew exactly how it would end. The house was unervingly silent, stripped of its usual warmth. David barely had time to set his keys down before he saw her. Michelle stood in the dim glow of the living room, a glass of wine in hand, her expression impossible to read. "Hey, sweetheart," he greeted, loosening his tie as he stepped toward her. "Long day?" Michelle smiled, but it was a hollow gesture, a mere formality. You could say that. She swirled the deep red liquid in her glass, watching him with the cool patience of a predator toying with its prey. "I had a very enlightening conversation today." A fraction of a second, that was all it took. A brief hesitation in David's expression, but Michelle caught it. "Oh." He kept his tone casual. "With who?" She tilted her head slightly. "A mutual acquaintance." Reaching for her phone on the coffee table, she swiped the screen and turned it toward him. David's breath hitched. There, in sharp, undeniable detail, were the photos, the receipts, the hotel bookings, the text messages. Every secret he had buried so carefully, now laid bare, glaring at him from the screen. Michelle took a slow sip of her wine, savoring the moment as she watched the color drain from his face. "Tell me, David," she said, her voice a delicate balance of silk and steel. "Were you ever going to tell me? Or was I supposed to continue playing a devoted wife while you entertained yourself with a woman who thinks she's an upgrade?" David opened his mouth, then closed it. His mind scrambled for an excuse, a way to talk his way out. But nothing came. Words had always been his weapon, his shield. But now, faced with irrefutable evidence, he found himself defenseless. "Michelle, I can explain." She laughed, a sharp, hollow sound that sent a chill down his spine. "Oh, I'm sure you can." She set her glass down and took a step forward, slow and deliberate. "But I don't care." She stopped inches from him, her voice dropping into something cold and final. "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to pack a bag. You're going to leave. And you will not fight me when I take everything you've worked for." David's eyes widened. "Michelle." She lifted a hand, silencing him. "No." She cut in. "You don't get to talk. You don't get to plead. You made your choices. Now you live with them." She stepped back, arms crossed, waiting, and for the first time, David truly saw it. There was no way out. No apology. No carefully crafted lie could undo this. For the first time in his life, David Holloway had lost. And Ryan Carter? He had won. Lena stood frozen in the doorway of David's apartment, her suitcase still clutched in her hand. Something was wrong. The air was thick with tension, suffocating. David wasn't smiling. He wasn't meeting her with his usual easy charm. He was pacing, fingers raking through his graying hair, his movements sharp and erratic. "David?" she asked cautiously. He turned to her, eyes wild, face pale. "It's over," he bit out. Lena frowned. "What are you talking about?" David let out a bitter laugh and gestured toward a half-packed bag scattered across the room. "Michelle knows," he snapped. His voice was thick with fury. "She has everything. The texts, the photos, the receipts. I don't know how she got them, but she did." Lena's stomach twisted. "What do you mean, she knows?" David stepped toward her, his jaw clenched tight. "My accounts, Lena. All of them. The house? Not mine anymore. She's taking everything in the divorce, and trust me, she can." He shook his head, his voice edged with disbelief. "I have nothing left." Lena blinked, trying to process. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. She had left Ryan's apartment believing she was walking into a life of ease, luxury, where David would take care of her, where she would never have to worry about money again. But now, David looked like a man unraveling. You said everything was handled, she said, her voice sharper than she intended. David's gaze snapped to hers, flashing with anger. And you said you were smarter than your ex. His words were venomous. Did it ever occur to you to wonder why Ryan didn't put up a fight when you left? Lena's breath caught. Ryan. A realization struck her like a freight train. He had been too calm, too composed. She had expected anger, begging, something. Instead, he had let her walk away without so much as an argument. Had she been so blinded by the promise of more that she had missed what was right in front of her? Her phone vibrated. A message. Ryan, you told me you found someone better. Her fingers trembled as she typed back. Lena, was he? The message was read instantly. No reply. Lena swallowed hard. David sank onto the edge of the bed, rubbing his temples. I just need time to fix this, he muttered. I need to figure out a way. But Lena wasn't listening anymore. For so long, she had convinced herself that she was in control, that she had played the perfect hand. But the truth was, she had never been the one pulling the strings. Ryan had been patient. Ryan had been precise. And in the end, Ryan had won. Her phone buzzed again. Ryan, enjoy your new life, Lena. She let out a shaky breath. The full weight of her mistake settled over her. And Ryan? He blocked her number and never looked back.